In the shadowed heart of North Charleston, South Carolina, a storm brewed within Joseph Ernest Atkins, 1947, January 23, 999, a Vietnam War veteran whose fractured soul would unleash a torrent of violence. A serial killer cloaked in the guise of a broken man, Atkins carved a path of devastation, claiming 3 lives in a chilling saga that would end in his execution. The seeds of tragedy were sown early. Born in 1947, the unwanted son of a sex worker, Joseph was adopted by Benjamin and Gladys Atkins. But the promise of a new beginning withered under Benjamin's fists and relentless verbal assaults. Worse still, Joseph's older half-brother, Charles Edward Atkins, tormented him with savage cruelty. One brutal attack left Joseph's stomach torn open, requiring surgery to survive. The home was a crucible of pain. Joseph watched helplessly as Benjamin's abuse drove Gladys to her grave, her death from a brain tumor at 15 hauntingly linked in his mind to the blows she endured. The horrors of Vietnam in the late 1960s seared deeper scars. Stationed on the perilous borders of Cambodia and Laos, Atkins witnessed unspeakable carnage. Comrades mutilated, captured soldiers' screams echoing through the jungle as they were tortured to death. Returning in October 1969, he carried medals: Vietnam Campaign, Vietnam Service, National Defense, but also an invisible weight, a darkness that would soon erupt. On a fateful New Year's Eve in 1969, the simmering tension between Joseph and Charles ignited. A drunken brawl at a friend's house sent Joseph storming to his adoptive father's home, miles away, to retrieve a shotgun. He returned with vengeance in his eyes, blasting Charles to death and shattering the house's windows in a frenzied outburst. Arrested and charged, Joseph claimed self-defense, alleging Charles reached for a gun. The jury saw through the lie, convicting him of murder in 1970. Spared the death penalty by their mercy, he was sentenced to life. Yet, Benjamin's desperate pleas for his adoptive son's freedom swayed the system, and Atkins walked free on parole in 1980, a ticking bomb released back into North Charleston. Living with his girlfriend, Linda Walters, in a duplex owned by his father, Atkins spiraled into alcoholism, his demons barely contained. In spring 1985, new neighbors, Aaron Polite, his wife Fatha Patterson, and their 13-year-old daughter, Karen, moved into the adjacent unit. Atkins kept his distance, but the darkness within him was stirring. October 27, 1985, dawned with an ominous chill. After a night drowned in liquor, Atkins transformed into a specter of war. Clad in military fatigues, armed with a machete, revolver, and sawed-off shotgun, he descended on the duplex like a predator. Aaron, roused by a disturbance, woke Fatha, who tried to call Benjamin for help, only to find the phone lines severed, a calculated act of malice. As Fatha fled to alert Benjamin, Joseph crept into Karen's bedroom. A single shotgun blast to her head snuffed out her young life. Aaron, frozen in terror, narrowly escaped as Joseph fired wildly, shotgun rounds tearing through the night. Fatha reached Benjamin, but the nightmare followed. As she opened the door, Joseph loomed on the porch, his shotgun trained on her. She recoiled, and he turned the weapon on his adoptive father, shooting Benjamin in the shoulder. The old man staggered inside, collapsing as life bled out. Joseph fired through the walls, a relentless assault, before roaring off on his motorcycle. Aaron and Fatha found Karen in a crimson pool, her lifeless body rushed to a hospital where Hope was pronounced dead. An off-duty officer, Detective Schuster, glimpsed the muzzle flashes and gave chase, pursuing Atkins through miles of darkened streets until a motorcycle crash ended the hunt. Atkins was cuffed, his rampage over. A chilling testimony from a neighbor, Arthur Henderson, sealed his fate. Atkins had vowed, "When I go home, anything I see in sight, I'm going to kill." In January 1986, the gavel fell. Indicted for 2 murders, 2 assaults with intent to kill, burglary, and weapons charges, Atkins faced a capital trial. His prior conviction ensuring the death penalty was on the table. His defense pleaded for mercy, citing alcoholism and a Vietnam-induced flashback, claiming he was lost in a war zone of his mind. The prosecution dismantled this, pointing to the severed phone lines as proof of cold premeditation. They invoked the hallowed names on the Vietnam Memorial, scorning Atkins's attempt to cloak his savagery in a soldier's honor. Would any of those 50,000 heroes excuse the murder of a defenseless child and his own father? They would be insulted. The jury deliberated for a mere hour before delivering a death sentence for both murders. Appeals dragged on, including a futile challenge over parole eligibility. South Carolina's laws at the time offered no life without parole, only a 20-year wait. The state Supreme Court upheld this in 1990, ensuring Atkins's fate. On January 23, 1999, at Broad River Correctional Institution, Joseph Atkins faced lethal injection. Silent to the end, he offered no final words, no remorse. The needle delivered justice, closing a chapter written in blood, leaving behind a haunting question. What demons drove a man to such darkness, and could they ever have been stopped?